G's, 4 G's, yeah. 4 G's, 4 G's, 4 G's, let's go. 4 G's, 4 G's, 4 G's, look. Full syndication, full elevation, all generations, we already made it. 4 G's, 4 G's, 4 G's, yeah. 4 G's, 4 G's, 4 G's, let's go. 4 G's, 4 G's, 4 G's, look. Full syndication, full elevation, all generations, we already made it. We got Shot, Dot, Malcolm, Chris the King, plus the Doc. You know that's like 4 G's. Sports Mind. Real world, real problems, real news, real sports. We gon' let you know right here on 4 G's. 4 G's.
Welcome back to another episode of 4G Sports. All right, I'm the OG. The King and Doc had to set him to the side for the day because we having the NIL exclusive part 2. All right, I'm not gonna take up too much of your time. I'm gonna let each guest introduce themselves, explain why they're here, and then we getting right into it. All right, as always, ladies first, and then we work our way down. Cassandra, it's on you, baby.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. My name is Cassandra Ramsey. I am a sport and entertainment attorney in the Washington, D.C. metro area. I have written extensively on name, image, and likeness. I'm very passionate about this topic and the opportunities that it provides for college athletes. And thank you for inviting me to be a part of this panel. Oh, yes, also he's holding up a copy of my ebook called The College Athlete's Guide to Preparing for Name, Image, and Likeness. I'm also currently working on the update to the ebook to reflect some of the changes as they've come down. So be on the lookout for that soon. And again, thank you for having me this morning.
No problem. Anthony.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Anthony Johnson. I'm a licensed NBA and FIBA sports agent for basketball players, but also have some clients that we're representing in the name, image, and likeness space. So I'm excited to share, I guess, what I can as it pertains to my journey and what's going on as far as the updates with name, image, and likeness. Thank you.
All right. Mike.
Good to go. All right. Appreciate Cassandra and Anthony joining. My name is Mike Albonetti. I'm in Houston, Texas. Founder of Athlete One Management, more specifically focused on preparing athletes in the high school space for the changing landscape in the NCAA. There's a lot we'll talk about in the high school space, but also changes coming from potentially federal laws and state laws that are going to impact high school athletes. So again, Mike Albonetti, Athlete One Management in Houston, Texas.
All right. So as you can see, this panel is well diverse in what we're going to talk about. I'm just going to put it out there. Whoever wants to start, and let's just keep it going. Name, image, and likeness. What is it briefly? Why is it so important, and why is this a great change for athletes? Whoever wants to start, we just gonna have a straight Q&A.
Well, I'll start. I'll take that. So what is name, image, and likeness? From the legal standpoint, name, image, and likeness is a legal concept that is born out of something called the right of publicity. And basically what it boils down to is a person's ability to control and profit from their name. Like my name is Cassandra Ramsey. My image, my face, and my likeness would be, if someone was to say, take this video, it doesn't have my name, but it has my glasses, my braids, and maybe even, like Forky in the background and stuff, something that's indicative of knowing that this is Cassandra Ramsey. To give you an example that kind of led us to this whole NIL rule changes would be from Ed O'Bannon, who was a former UCLA basketball standout who sued the NCAA, arguing that their rules precluding him from benefiting from a college basketball game that was put on by EA Sports. The game reflected him in his 1995 UCLA championship team. Although his name was not a part of the game, the player was bald-headed, was number 31, was left-handed, all things that were indicative of his likeness that was clear to anybody who knew of that team that was him. So that's the concept. It's important because it allows you to continue to make money. This was 2009 when Ed O'Bannon sued the NCAA, but he had played in college in 95. And essentially the NCAA was continuing to make money from his success as a college athlete while he wasn't making any. So that's why it's important. That's a little tinge of how we got here. So if someone else wants to speak to this as
And
well.
Anthony, from a agent standpoint, how does this affect, or does it help or affect your business?
Well, it definitely affects our business. Whether it helps it is to be determined. I think interesting thing. I think a lot of entities have kind of emerged as experts in this space, whether that be corporations or marketing professionals and so on. So it's impacted in that capacity. One is just if you are agent exploring the collegiate athlete representation, then there's a lot of competition and newcomers in these spaces that obviously would trickle up to potentially professional competition as well. So with that being said, that's been just an immediate impact is having more competition in the space, but also everybody's trying to solidify themselves as an authoritative source in the name, image, and likeness space. For sure. And if we can get into the legislation and all the policies and other direct fees that have been tripled by certain states and so on because of name, image, and likeness, if you want me to go into those things too.
Okay, we'll get into that, and we'll get into that in a second as well. And Mike, as far as high schools and the changes with that, how is that going? Is that wrecking shop, or is it kind of slowly but surely coming in, or?
A lot of the state legislation restricts, and they label them as prospective student athletes, so that's high schoolers. Texas specifically restricts any corporate entity, corporation, business or individual from partnering with a prospective student athlete. We saw a prime example of the top recruit out of Texas. He kind of left his team and went to Ohio State early. And capitalized on a marketing deal with a drink company in his hometown and made quite a bit of money, although he comes from kind of a wealthy family in Dallas area. But needless to say, his team this past week didn't do too bad without him. They blew out their opponent. But in the high school space, we saw a lot with things in basketball in California. Athlete capitalized on marketing, but it was not under a high school association. So it was a private school. So private schools are not under high school associations. So what we're seeing, even if the state may allow it, if you're under a high school association that doesn't allow it, you could lose your eligibility under that high school association. So from a legal standpoint, Cassandra may know a little more, maybe not specifically in Texas, but that's what I've been understanding from my point of view in the high school space. It's still slow. I don't see a lot of it, but I definitely see it coming down the pipe. I know the UIL mentioned, that's the Interscholastic League down here in Texas. They mentioned they're reviewing their policy in October, but that doesn't supersede state law currently. So wondering how many amendments are going to happen to state law in the next year or two. So it's an exciting time to kind of be in it, but it's kind of up and down, not knowing where the high school space is going to go. But the major key, I think, just educating the kids on the next step. You can't capitalize now, you can't make money now, but you can build your brand and tell your story. I mean, that's the goal that I'm trying to do with these kids is build your brand, tell your story in high school. So when you get to college, you kind of have the following, you have your story behind you, and people want to follow you and see that. And then ideally, as you progress, hopefully a deal will come down the pipe. So
Okay. So just say, because I'm just going to shoot from the hip with these questions. If I'm a parent and I have a senior, when do you start? I mean, I know it's new, but do you start kind of getting all your ducks in a row for the NIL now, or do you kind of wait till they figure out what college they're going to go to, what state they're going to be in, to start doing all that? Cassandra?
You can build your brand and tell your story your freshman year. Hell, there's kids that have Instagram in 8th grade or 7th grade now. But anyways, the reality of it is, ideally, sophomore, juniors, seniors, more specifically top recruits that are going to go play the next level, they have their following based on just their recruitment process. 5-star, 4-star, they want to see where they're committed, but then when they commit to said school, they lose a third of their following because it's just fandom. But if you build your brand on the field still, but build your brand off the field, I mean, you could be a D lineman that loves cooking, or you love fishing, or you go hunting, or whatever. You share those stories on your Instagram, and people, they may not be attached to you as just an athlete, they're attached to you as a person. So no matter if you go to Texas A&M, TCU, they're not going to be hurt when they may be an Aggie fan and you go to UT. They're still going to want to follow you and your successes. So then building your brand, I think, is important from the get-go. It does matter what state you're going to get to. Now, maybe Cassandra can answer from, you come from Texas, but then you go play in Ohio, you got to follow both states, or you got to follow where you're living at the time. I mean, that's a part that I have to understand a little bit more from the legality aspect of it, but you can continue to build your brand and tell your story in high school. So
okay, and oh, there she is.
Interrupted me.
Here we go. Now it's about to get spicy, ladies and gentlemen. But as you see, we added another member. All I'm gonna say is, two phones. Introduce yourself, please.
Mike was talking. I didn't want to interrupt.
No.
Oh no, when we saw you pop in, that's why we stopped and let you come on in.
I'm Kandi Conda, CEO of Life After Sports, and I just started a new company, also the Las Vegas Sports Consortium. And of course, I've always, Life After Sports, we've always kind of, worked in conjunction with parents and students and helping them to, prepare themselves before, during, and after. And of course, we build brands. So we kind of work a little bit hand in hand with everybody, with what everyone is doing. So sorry for being late, guys. It's been,
no
been
problem.
a long evening.
Trust me. No
in
problem.
LA, I'm turning up.
I know how that gets. So, as a parent, when does the lawyer representation come in? And when should you look for a lawyer, or should you kind of deal with the law aspect once you figure out, like, okay, I want my son to go here? Did you start kind of finding a lawyer to figure out your role then? Or do you do it high school when you're like, hey, I know he's going to go here?
So, I think if we're talking on the high school level, we still have to check to see what your high school association rules are in terms of speaking with professional representation and things of that nature, just to make sure that you don't, violate your interscholastic eligibility. And that's just for more signing representation agreements. But just pure seeking information, I think that parents should, do all that they can to try to get as much information as possible. By watching things like this, and reaching out to people like myself who are just wanting to arm people with as much information that they need so that they can get the most out of the situation for their children.
Okay.
So I think as you start to get more closer to college and into where they may go, then you can start to have more concrete representation conversations. But in the beginning, I just think you just should be having conversations for trying to get the information.
Okay. So Anthony, let's get back to you. And another question I wanted to ask you is, what will agents start looking at kids now? Well, I guess you really can't have an agent going into college. But I mean, as far as this NIL stuff, would that kind of start branching off to say your own department in your agency, to where now you can kind of deal with kids in high school going through college and kind of get them to sign with your company as a client for everything?
A lot of kindness there. I don't know how to answer that. But I do want to, though, going back to Cassandra's, just before I get to that.
Okay.
I think from a legal perspective, I know it's debatable, but I think regardless whether if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, you still have to own your IP. So at least that's one way they probably can connect with lawyers at an earlier phase as far as like assisting with that intellectual property, whether you're high school, collegiate to professionally. So that's something just to consider, or even business attorneys if you're creating an LLC and so on. Now, to your question about, you said with I want to make sure I understand this correctly.
I know it's so like with the being an agent, would agencies start having NIL departments for high school and college kids, and hoping that dealing with them early, they will sign with you as a full-time client?
So, I'm gonna put this disclaimer out. One, the way the kind of laws is stating right now is the name, image, and likeness agreement should not be contingent on you signing with them professionally.
Oh yeah, no.
It should be the extent of their collegiate career. It shouldn't extend beyond that.
Okay.
Now, obviously, if you do good business and the person wants to continue working with you, then that's great. But it shouldn't be intertwined in like the agreements itself. Now, what I will say is that agents have already created NIL components or entities, for sure. But I mean, this is not really too different from what agents already do, though. Like or marketers, you're basically creating marketing endorsement deals and so on for professional players. So now you're just trickling down to collegiate players, which, while I personally think the agents or marketers are more fitting to be in these roles than other business professionals, because they've done it in their previous endeavors. Now, when it comes to high school players, agents are talking to high school players, especially basketball players. If you don't, but the thing is, you can talk to a player, you can have a conversation with an agent. It's just it gets iffy when they're providing advances or gifts, or if those conversations have a contingent, like it's based off of you signing per se. But you can have conversations. There's no law that says you can't talk to an agent. That's just some type of narrative that's been pushed because people want people to not have conversations with agents because of a multitude of different reasons. But you can have a conversation with them. It's just that once they start offering you dinners and all those other things where it can get spicy.
Okay.
That doesn't happen.
Kandi and Mike, I guess
Did you say Mike? Did you say Mike?
I said that doesn't happen though. The dinners don't happen.
And my two branding gurus, Mike kind of touched on it. They can start as early as whenever, dealing with their Instagram and building up followings. Because like I know the kid that you're talking about out of Texas, the quarterback, but also saw a story that I think he was a quarterback at Northwestern or some school. He signed a NIL. Now he's able to take his lineman to dinner 3 times a week. A Ford dealership gave him a car to drive around as a loaner. He's running camps, but all the money and the stuff he's giving back to the Boys and Girls Club. So with those type of things going on, at a branding standpoint, as a parent, what do you kind of, I don't even know how to put it, how do you get all the mess out the way to where it's not going to be a problem? Because I know everybody's coming now that is new. You get all kind of crazy offers and, I can do this and I can do that. But as a branding, what is one thing that you should never give up branding wise?
Your values. I mean, you build your brand, you have your personal values that you stand behind. If it's again hunting, fishing, if it's faith driven, if it's whatever, I mean, stand behind your values. There's going to be brands throwing, I wouldn't say throwing money, but again, throwing deals at you left and right. But if you don't research them and align with their values and where they're going as a company, then there's no need to partner with them. I mean, if you're chasing money, I would recommend it, but that's your ultimate choice. But partner with the brands that align with your values. I mean, I've used this plenty of times, but Von Miller, for example, no one knows some people know, but he got like a poultry science degree from Texas A&M. He's one of the best linebackers in the NFL, and that's what a lot of people know him for, but he owns a chicken farm, and he's going to retire being like a poultry expert. But he has dealerships with like our deals with Carhartt and John Deere and all that stuff. So it's like it aligns with his values. It aligns with his business, his retirement, quote unquote, and he's aligning those deals that are his values and his business that he's doing. So in regards to the community aspect, I kind of strive to add that too, build your brand, but then also partner with nonprofits that again align with the same values and mission that you're trying to achieve. From if it's homeless, if it's pets and dogs, rescuing them, if it's whatever. I mean, you can make your money and give back. Or again, you mentioned the quarterback from Northwestern. I'm thinking of was it De'Ara King out of Miami? He's treating his teammates. There's one guy at A&M that he said if he gets deals, he's going to split it with his teammates, and that can kind of bring up the discussion of how it's going to bring together or separate the locker room between players. But that could be a whole other aspect. But in the end, I guess the big boys on the line don't get the love anyways, and it's always the QBs and skill positions. But I just saw today. I mean, at UT, the whole O line partnered with a burger joint or like a breakfast joint and went and did a marketing deal for their new burrito or something. So the whole line got free burritos or something like that. And that's what I was thinking. O line, D line, hot eating contest. Now don't hurt yourself now by eating too much. You got to give the big boys loving too. So.
Oh yeah, you got to. Without them, you have no protection.
Yep.
Kandi, I know you just joined, so how do you, jump in and say, I don't even know how to even catch you up.
It's okay. I'm just going to jump in. I'll just jump in between where they are. First of all, I always agree with the brand. I think the brand has to come first, number one, because, like what Mike was saying, if you compromise your brand, then, what else do you have? Because I'll give you an example. I saw I'm not going to mention the brand, but I saw a NIL that one of the very large brands did with a lot of the students. And, this particular brand had them all share something personal, that had happened to them that I guess traumatized them when they were younger. And I was trying to put the whole thing together. Was this just we're a big brand and we can come in and give all these students this NIL deal for cash because we want to sprinkle our brand across the internet? Or how will this really affect these students later on, sharing these intimate personal deals, details about themselves? They were talking about when their grandparent died, or a couple of them were talking about, coming up being, raised in a single family home. But then some of the stories I thought were, to me, a little bit too personal and too intrusive. And, those are those things that, what I'm going to hope and pray, because I've been talking to a couple of companies that have been doing NIL deals. And what we're talking about right now is, me coming in and actually doing some workshops, because that's one of the things that the Life After Sports brand does, and talking to them and the parents about, the what's next, what happens next. Because this one company that I'm talking to right now, they have a deal right now on the table with 100 kids. One particular brand wants to work with 100 students. And so, I also, how does this affect the parents? I have five points here. Number one, how does this affect the parents? Because these are adults now. So right now the parents, legally can only advise them, but they cannot say you cannot do this. So, I really want parents involved. That's one of the things that I'm going to talk to Mike about this later. I really want to do some parent workshops. I want the parents to, get involved a little bit, because they can only, like I said, they can advise, but I want these students to really involve their parents, because what happens if a student makes an NIL deal or commitment that turns out not to be good for them or the family long term? So I just want to, that's one thing. I know they can't, like I said, can't pressure them. I just want them to look behind pitfalls that may come up later. The other thing is the tax implication. I was just reading yesterday about because now some of these students will have to file taxes. Some of them have been under tax protection. I remember when my daughter was in college, I think the first couple of years she was under my tax protection. She didn't file taxes the first couple of years. Well, these students are not going to have that luxury. And I was reading yesterday, I don't know if you guys saw that, a couple of days, they were talking about Percy Miller and that big deal that he's going to take. That's going to be a massive, bevy of taxes that he's going to have to file on that. So, like I said, I'm all about the brand. I want to see I think the brands are important. I think it should be matched up. And then my last point on what you guys just brought up was, how far out of the lines do we go with, I'm gonna give back to the community. I'm gonna do a camp. I'm gonna do a clinic. I'm gonna take my, what about the sport? Also, what about school? What about education? I also just don't want to see this whole NIL thing. I think it will level out in the next couple of years once the shine wears off a little. But right now, also, I'm just concerned if I send my child to school and he does happen to be this great athlete, I don't want him to get lost in where's my next NIL deal coming from. You see what I'm saying? Also, so, just those things that I want to just keep in the forefront of and talk to those real life skills issues is what I'm, talking with some of these companies that are providing these opportunities behind the scenes.
Okay.
But brand is first. Brand is definitely
brand is first.
Brand.
Right.
Oh, can I just say one thing?
Go ahead.
It sounds like at least from my perspective, from what both Kandi and Michael said, one thing that I think the parents and the athletes need to understand is that, and try to view the NIL opportunities as a way to set yourself up for life after your sport. Right. So that would be the importance of, staying true to your brand, as Mike was hinting to, because you're going to want to create a brand around something that you want to do after your sport. Seeing the broader picture of life after your 4 years in college, whether or not if you make it to the league or not.
Absolutely.
I know, like, you guys were still learning. I don't know what to look for. So at this point, NIL, why is this a major breakthrough? Or, I guess what I'm trying to say is it I know it's a win for the athletes, because now they can finally get paid, because schools are getting paid off of, selling their jerseys and stuff like that. But at some point, like Kandi said, it's going to have to level out. And when do we say, okay, now it's fair? What is a fair NIL deal? Like, everyone gets an allotment, lineman, whatever your sport is, we have certain things for you, or you come in with your own. I'm confused. So if anyone just want to just talk about, I guess, the advantages and what they would hope would happen with this NIL in the future to make it more.
Well, I think a lot of stuff that people feel like it's fair, and fair can get very murky because it's kind of based off of your perspective on what fairness is. In this space, some people fairness is I'm getting properly compensated for the effort that I put forth. Some people fairness is everybody's being compensated in some capacity. So it really depends on your view in that capacity, I would say. But I think a lot of people are probably going to push more for like group licensing, as far as a degree of fairness, as far as multiple players are being compensated for some type of pot of money. The thing with that can get a little bit murky is because, again, if everybody gets paid, it's not technically, probably, if we're just being honest, if everybody's getting paid, that's not going to be fair to someone, because some of the people aren't playing and performing, right? But they're still getting paid for those things. So it's that's what I'm saying. It's really contingent on the perspective, and I think we want like this big kumbaya, everybody eats perspective, and if you do that, then it would have to be there essentially not paid for their image and likeness. They're going to be paid for their performance as player and participation. And I know that has not been pushed at the moment, but I think if it's going to go to everybody getting paid, then you're going to have to start talking a little bit more into pay for performance in some capacity, from my perspective. And I will say this, just from my experiences, like, even though people are getting deals, a lot of players aren't getting paid for the deals that they're getting. Like, if we're just being completely honest, a lot of players are getting in-kind merchandise. Not necessarily I'm getting paid to post or do an appearance or sign some jerseys or something like that. A lot of the people are putting these brands in their bios and they're representing these brands, but that doesn't necessarily mean those brands are sending them a check or paying them some compensation. So just keep that in mind when we're seeing all of these brands who are representing hundreds of players, that they might not even be paying these players, because I think because of the landscape, players to some degree at this point, once you feel like they're associated with a brand from a name, image, and likeness perspective, they just want to be in that locker room saying, I'm working with X brand. And I think that's a dangerous field to play, because y'all were talking about branding. Sometimes brand alignment might not work, and you're associating yourself with a brand that doesn't necessarily add value to yourself. And then you could also cannibalize your brand if you're associated with too many brands, and it can work inadvertently to you as well. So just my thoughts.
And I would like to. I have a question and a statement. And I have a question for Anthony, and then I have a statement. So the statement first is the one of the companies that I've been talking to. They have been paying the students for posts, and so as I was doing my research with them, and I asked them, how did they come up with the figure that they came up with, and they have a metric system that they have, and they've and this metric system, it goes, it's so detailed, from how many touchdowns a particular student made, or if they went to any particular bowl game, or if they they literally go back through their whole every single stat that they have, everything they've done. It moves them up the food chain to get paid more money with this particular company that does give away cash for NIL. Okay, so I've talked to a couple of more people that now are coming out. I think there's 2 other companies that have apps now that do the same thing. They have a metric system. This metric system, gives you an idea of how much a student is worth as far as the NIL post or the social media post or whatever. So to Anthony's point, that also changes the that moves you up, if you've had more touchdowns than someone else, or if you are a starter, that moves you up the food chain. So each one of these different metrics and each one of these, accolades that you have, it moves you up to a higher pay scale. So that's something interesting too. That's always going to separate you in the locker room, on the field, or wherever. It's going to separate you. And then there'll be some that say, well, this person deserves it, right? It's just like a regular, NFL player. Though there are going to be, some people get paid bigger salaries, right? I'm sure Russ Wilson's making more than someone else, because he's better. So it's going to be that same concept, and that's the concept that worries me too in the long run. As far as, like, I think it was Mike that said locker room issues and things of that nature, separating the guys, separating the 6-man. I always say the 6-man issue. But I wanted to ask Anthony, I saw one of the agents, I'm not going to say a name, and they actually reached back out of a very prominent agency and gave some college students some NIL deals. I want to know how do you think that's going to change the game now, if some of the bigger agencies are also getting in the NIL game too? Because of course they're able to reach out and give deals or carrots, maybe, even if it's not deals, that the smaller boutique agencies like yourself cannot give. How do you think that will affect the landscape of the NIL? With agencies?
The bigger agencies been eating regardless, and they're going to continue to eat. But from my perspective, man, I think it just, for me, I feel like it gives me more opportunity to get in the door. So with those opportunities, it's all like, once you get in that door, what you're going to do with them and how you can leverage it. Yes, those bigger agencies, they probably have more existing relationships with brands, so they probably had conversations with brands about, hey, how many players do you want to that point, and what type of players or what sports are you looking for? And they probably could, because I know one of my clients, some bigger agencies, tried to recruit them kind of on the same pitch. Well, hey, have you thought about working with this company? Basically, they have pre-existing relationships with these companies, and if obviously the person says yes, then they're going to try to bring that's how they reel them into their agency. So in that capacity, them having those pre-existing relationships is definitely going to be favorable to them. But for me, being a boutique agency, being able to be fluid, but also very strategic with who we align with, but tenacious. You get what I'm saying? As far as like pursuing and who I'm going after, I'm not scared to. I'm not too big to send a DM, to send you a LinkedIn video request by any means necessary to get to connect with. I'm gonna find out who's in charge of athlete partnership for this company, who is the next person, who's the social media coordinator. So I'm gonna just keep knocking at the door to some capacity to kind of ensure that I can get some opportunities for my players. And I think sometimes having that connectivity can go a long way. Because sometimes with these bigger agencies, you're not talking to the agent, you're talking to the person next to the agent or their intern or so and so, are kind of, doing some of these deals as well. But I think ultimately for me, it creates more opportunity because it's just more of a pool of clients to pick from, to potentially engage with. And again, as Mike had touched upon earlier, if you do a good job, hopefully those things can transition into professional pursuits too. But there's, at the same time, now you aren't just competing with the bigger agencies, you're competing with the universities, you're competing with all of these third-party applications who are not charging agent fee, charging transaction fees, whatever they're calling it is something different. So it's a lot of other different entities now who are in this space beyond just the big agency and the small agency. There's a lot of new emerging companies that are coming out there. So it's just a matter of what you're going to do with it. But I like that it's more opportunity to connect with with more student athletes for sure. And that for me as a boutique agency, that also gives us added access too, because some of my clients' brands are coming to them. So now you have relationships with those brands that you might not have had on the front end, but now it's what you're going to do with it.
Okay.
I just want to make a point to the initial question about fairness and everything, but I think that we have to remember that, America is a capitalistic society, right? So the thing is that the market is going to dictate who gets paid what, just in any other society. When these cases that led to this new NIL landscape were brought on antitrust principles, basically saying that the NCAA and the conferences and the schools cannot collude and work together to restrict the market, and that's, doing that is not fair. So, you get into terms of fairness and stuff, we just have to remember that, some players will potentially make more, have more opportunities because they produce more. And that's just the reality of the situation. That is where group licensing can come in to kind of try to make things more equitable. But it's kind of what we asked for, for people who were advocating for college athletes' rights, right? So you have to let the market dictate.
Okay. All right. Now, under the NIL, as everyone is doing different parts, does it help your companies to even say, you know what, I know an agent, I know someone that's a lawyer, I know a branding person, let's all put our little resources together under one umbrella just for NIL. We still do everything else, but NIL, we can come together and say, Anthony's our agent, you're the lawyer, and our two branding people, Kandi and Mike. Now we have a company. Does that help smaller businesses get to the point to where they're trying to get to, or you still just stick with what you do and just kind of go at it separately? Anyone can answer that.
I think it depends on what resources that your brand already has as far as being a smaller business. Like,
okay,
I'm not sure if, like, if Cassandra could already have relationships with agents, is this a relationship with agents or branding partners? We could already have some position lawyers that we work with or branding partners as well. So it's really going to depend on the extent of what your in-house looks like, I would say, to that point. But I do think, with that being said, there's still an immense amount of opportunities for connecting. And I know I've talked to probably almost everyone on this call to have some opportunities about collaboration in some capacity. But I do think there's power in and kind of trying to go forward from a collective. Is one that just makes more of a unified front when you're talking about presenting to clients, because you're competing against some of the bigger houses where they're coming in to meet, and they might have 10 people sitting at the round table. So you definitely want to kind of prove that you can, even if you're like, we're the Marines, we're a little bit more, tactful than certain entities. You definitely, okay, whatever. I know no dog in that fight. Okay. I think that we can go with the answer. We'll see, but, you might be a little bit more tactful in, like, how you're presenting. That's because we don't have as many bodies, don't mean we don't have a big enough fight. So I think there is power in that collaboration. But again, to your initial question, I think it's really going to be contingent on what resources that you have within your wheelhouse already.
Okay.
Can I jump in here for a second?
Yes.
And I want to say that I have to piggyback on both what you and what Anthony just said. I've talked to Mike. I've talked to Cassandra. Me and Anthony talk all the time. But I do think that it is time that we probably should think about this, because I've sat on about at least 3 or 4 webinars of groups that's exactly what they did already. They've already put their little group together, and they kept referring, oh, if you need a lawyer for NIL, here's our NIL lawyer. If you need branding, here's our, they already had, their little team together. And of course, that was a very smart way to go. So it's funny that you say that. I think that, like I said, I had been trying to actually carve out what part I wanted to have, because I didn't really want to step on anyone's toes. And it keeps on popping up. And like I said, I think that, because a company actually reached out to me and asked me to work on their parent seminars, I think that's kind of, someone actually just kind of gave me my lane a little bit, and so, because I didn't want to step on what Mike does, because, and Cassandra and Anthony, it was a little bit more defined. And so, and that's exactly what I'm doing right now, is just working on the parent piece, for a company that already is doing NIL deals. It's a very young company, but they've been not dealing with the parents. They've been just dealing with the athletes, texting them, DM me for your check kind of thing, and we started talking, and I said, well, what about the parents? And are you educating the parents? Are you telling them what's going on? Do they know? Or it's just that their kids coming home with the new check and the shoes and, and they were like, kind of, sort of, yeah. So I said, well, why don't we just include them, at least so they, not that they tell them what to do, but just so that they are educated. And he was like, you're absolutely right, because now we're getting a lot of questions, and now we've got this really big deal with 100 athletes for one client. And I don't want to just, have all these parents saying, okay, what is this? What's going on? So now I kind of, like I said, a lane was actually kind of like given to me. And because Life After Sports already does, we've already got 60 workshops in our wheelhouse. This is what we do anyway. So like I said, a lane kind of just provided itself for me. And now, I think it's something that we can possibly investigate. I think we should do it, at least try it. So you might have actually hit on something today. OG?
Give credit to the OG. Give credit to the OG. I was just curious that someone actually put Kandi in her lane, No, I'm kidding.
You getting it after this, Mike. You are getting it.
No, but I agree at everything. I mean, again, this isn't the first time we've met each other. And we've talked about a lot of potential collaboration, potential kind of passing referrals type of things. And I've been just collectively meeting with other people all throughout the nation. I mean, now, like Cassandra may know, Texas law is different than Louisiana, different than Alabama, different than this, different than that. So that's going to be kind of a hiccup. But then also from an agent perspective, I know, Anthony, last time you were looking at different states to kind of get certified in and all that, and then the money
coming to Texas. I might be this meeting go right today. I'm getting certified in Texas.
Me and Mike are doing a workshop in Texas, so you better hurry up.
Yeah.
You said what?
Me and Mike are doing a workshop in Texas, so you better hurry up.
Oh, listen, I'm already working on the application.
All right. You're doing it on the side. I see you kind of typing on your phone a little bit. Texas is a hotbed. Now they're going to be a little more restrictive in the high school space, but from a larger perspective. And I was speaking to some other people as well that, I'm adaptable. I'm not stuck in my niche type of thing. Now we all have our niche. Again, I'm not a legal expert. I'm not a certified agent. And I'm not at the top tier level as Kandi as far as branding, but I mean, we all have our respective, knowledge and our respective niches that I think can just collaborate for an even greater good. And then kind of like based on what Anthony was saying, the larger brands, they're gonna target the Eric Kings, they're gonna target the star players and all that stuff. But there's so much more opportunities that you can get. You may not get a 6-figure or multi-million-dollar deal for your player, but I mean there's so much opportunity out there for these other cats on the field, on the court, that they need representation. And he referenced the marketplaces that are out there. I thought that could be a little roadblock for agents and whatnot, kind of like they're doing like a transactional deal, but I think that goes back to what Kandi was saying in regards to you're an athlete, but then you're a student. Your education is important. That's a whole other debate we could have later on about student athlete and whatnot. But they may want someone to manage it for them, type of thing. So a lot of these marketplaces have it where the agents can kind of manage the deals for them. Now, the percentage that the agents make, that's between the agent and the athlete. But I think the marketplaces are good, but then also agents are needed as well. So I'll kind of end it on that. But
yeah, and I'm pro marketplace. Now granted, some of these marketplaces are charging 20-30% or whatever for a deal. So if I have a client that's on the marketplace, they get a deal, I'm not going to take a percentage of that, because they're already taking 20-30%. You still probably got to pay taxes on it and all that other stuff, and it might only be a few $100s. It's like, at this point, like, I just want them to, eat and, make some money for their likeness. But I think the marketplaces can be valuable because some of those things are set up very well. I think, again, if you're going to those marketplaces, though, you also just want to have a clear vision of the brand and what that you're trying to convey, so you can kind of search categorizations that aligns with the touch points that you want to put out there socially. And then when you're creating content for them, it's authentic. It's not like some cookie cutter or flushed stuff, because that's not going to bode well for the brand. It's not going to bode well for your audience as well. So that'll have a long-term implications as far as engagements and stuff too. So I just wanted to make that clear. Like, I'm for the marketplaces, and even for some of them, depending on their fees, some are better than others. Just to be clear, depending on their fees, I probably wouldn't even charge an agent fee or a commission at all, because it just wouldn't make sense. It'd be too much bearing on the athlete.
All right. Now, I always wanted to ask this question. I think this would be the great panel to ask. Since EA, all these games have kind of stopped for the college level, when they come back, say they do the football and basketball, would they have to talk to each individual player to make sure they're okay with being on this game and what their conversation will be, or they'll just put them on there and they'll talk to them later?
What? No, they shouldn't just put them up there.
I mean, because how they were doing before, they just put the squad out, the numbers, and they're saying, I'm not putting your name on the back.
Yeah, right, like that.
But everyone knows number 5 for USC in 2005 was Reggie Bush. No question about it.
That is precisely what got them sued in 2009 by Ed O'Brien.
Right.
So the NCAA carried the case out all the way to the I think it was the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court just did not take that case. But creative, I think licensing, the people who made the EA Sports game, they were also a part of that case, but they settled. So that's why when you talk about the case later, nobody don't really talk about that part, because they settled out, and they settled out for exactly that. So no, that's definitely not the route that I see them going to have that happen again. As far as the return of the video games, it's really going to hinge on group licensing. Okay. We had a bill from, I think it was Senator Chris Murphy, that in his NIL bill, the federal one, he was advocating a provision in there for group licensing. But it's like, okay, how do you do it, right? So we've had, I think it's the University of North Carolina, I think it's like the first school to partner with this company called the Brand Group, and they have a partnership with some type of group licensing, and it allows the athletes to voluntarily opt in, and they can use their schools. In this case, we're talking about UNC. They can use UNC trademarks. They can, I think it's for a single sport, they can get up to 3 athletes, and for multiple sports, they can have up to 6 athletes. 6 or more and 3 or more. Sorry, and they can, collectively, enter into some kind of deal, which is like a group licensing format. So that's going to be what's needed to really bring the video game back, and to have the players in it like they should be, like you would see in a Madden game, right? Because with Madden, the NFLPA licenses the NFL players' licenses and everything to EA Sports to make the game, and then everybody is apportioning their piece of the pie, from their licensing agreement. So that's really where we are.
I would also, I'm curious. I don't think this may have some indicators, but see like how these conferences are starting to link up.
Yeah.
It's talked about implications with the Big 12 and Big 10 and Pac 12 and everybody trying to merge. Then, this SEC is on steroids coming soon. I'm beating up on your Texas places, Mike. But I think that I could see that also potentially trickling down to the potential group licensing stuff going forward. But to Cassandra's point, group licensing is the key.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things even with that alliance. Soon after they announced that alliance, they got a letter from the attorneys that represented the Alston side of the case that recently came down. Just basically warning them, like, you can't engage in any restrictive antitrust activity. Then the other thing that'll be an important issue with group licensing is, some kind of union or trade association for college athletes, so that that entity can make the group licensing agreement just like the NFLPA does for the NFL. So.
Okay. I mean, well, at this point, my mind is about to explode. I just have to sit back and really, because this is very interesting, and I think a lot of people will learn a lot from this. If there's anything you want to do in your closing, your shout outs, any other points you want to add, of course, all your links will be added at the bottom of the show in the description, but you're allowed to put out whatever you need to at this point. I'm going to turn it over to every one of you, and just give a shout out and whatever else you want to end the show with. Cassandra, since you're there, we're going to start with you, baby.
All right. Again, thank you all for having me. If there's, a couple of points that I would like to make, it's just, as you're engaging in these new name, image, and likeness space, one thing that I want to reiterate is ownership. Making sure that you as an athlete own your brand, own your trademark. If your school or whoever is helping you create your trademark or brand, make sure you look, or have someone like myself look over that deal to make sure that you are owning everything related to you. So again, thank you for having me, and I will turn it over to who's next.
Anthony, go ahead, sir.
I thought I just wanted to let the ladies go.
Well, I mean, Candy's gonna close out. We keep Kandi for the closing.
Understood.
That's my headliner. We save her for last.
Understood. Yeah. I would say, beyond owning what you can, understand the resources that are at your disposal. The universities can be a resource to that point. I would think caution to say the universities are resources, but don't think that they're always your friend, because they're going to protect what comes on the front of their jersey before they worry about your name on the back, which again ties into that ownership going forward. But if they are resources, leverage them as such. I always say social media is a tool or a toy. In this name, image, and likeness space, you really want to leverage it as a tool and use it effectively, because I know this is not popular, but the 12th man on the bench can make more money in the name, image, and likeness space than an All-American who doesn't have that much of a following, depending on how that social media presence is. So, tool or toy, own what you can. Universities are a resource, but they aren't your friends. And lastly, I would say, if y'all got some name, image, and likeness deals, send them to Renaissance Sports Group. Let's go.
That's what I'm talking about. Mike, I told you we saving Kandi for last. So, Mike, go ahead, sir.
I don't know if I can follow behind that one.
I know. Yeah, always seek, the legal advice, and if you want to pursue an agent, pursue an agent. That's great. They're there to help you. They're not there to capitalize and take from you. But always just educate yourself. All of us on this panel are still educating ourselves in the space, because it's changing every damn week, honestly. And stay on top of it. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Again, Anthony said, there are universities that are partnering with, good third parties that are educating on branding, that are, educating on the legislative pieces of it. Always be compliant. Make sure you're being compliant, reporting the deals. Cassandra say make sure you stay compliant so you don't lose the deal. But again, continue to just, Anthony touched on it with social media, build your brand, tell your story. He mentioned, the 12th man sitting at the end of the bench kid could make more money than the star point guard based on his just social media and his brand. So tell your story, build your brand, and stay compliant.
All right. Here we go. Come on, two
But I
phone
haven't done
headliner.
anything. I'm going to probably say the least here. I just want to say that, thank you guys for having me. I think this was awesome. Part two, part deux, as they say in France. Great job, guys. This was an awesome team. Anthony, Mike, and Cassandra. You guys did a bang up job. Again, I do echo everything that everyone said, and especially Cassandra. I'm really big. I've been from the beginning hammering in on those trademarks, making sure you do those, any kind of copyright or trademark that you have, make sure you get it. If your parents, whoever has to pay for it, make sure they do it before someone else does. The other thing is include your parents in these deals. Make sure you get some counsel, because there are a lot of people now that are out here hawking you on the internet, on social media, saying get paid, get paid, get paid. And, for students who have not had that or that come from, underserved communities, this is huge. And I understand it and I got it. But that extra phone call to, someone like Cassandra, someone, that's gonna, or a parent or someone that you trust, a coach, I think it's worth all, it's worth all the marbles. Life After Sports is here for whatever you guys need to support any of you guys in any endeavors. If you need a workshop or if you need, me to show up, if you need a connection, same thing. If you're going to do something in Vegas, make sure you hit us up, the consortium. We put that together just for, we weren't able to pull together Anthony's event, however. So
next year we coming.
Another story for another day during NBA during Summer League. So I'm gonna talk about Anthony a little bit later on the next live. But
oh really?
That's on another live. But really seriously though, I just want to say that NIL can be amazing, but it can also be a drug. And as we say with any drug, use it responsibly, guys. And on that note, I'm gone. I'm out.
All right. Well,
Clubhouse, as we say, I'm done speaking.
Well, from the 4Gs aspect, I want to thank everyone. This was, like I said, I'm still trying to. I don't even have a kid in college or going to playing sports, and I'm still trying to understand this is what's going on, and just to know that, unlike some parents, I can actually call either one of you guys and be like, hey, what is this? This doesn't make any sense to me. And you can explain it to me. That's what this was for. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you very much. I know this is like Mike said, it changes every day, probably every 20 seconds. Something new is probably coming up and you guys are staying on it. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. And if we need to do it again, a part 3, then you let us know and we'll put it out there. But as always, thank you for watching another episode. And 4Gs, as always, we are out. Thank you.